Commander Zethkar stood on the bridge of his massive warship, staring at the blue marble floating in the darkness ahead. Earth looked so small and peaceful from this distance, the third planet from a yellow star, home to billions of primitive creatures who called themselves humans. "Sir, we are approaching the Shadow Gate," his lieutenant reported. The young officer's voice carried barely hidden excitement. This was his first campaign, and he believed they were about to witness the easy conquest of a backward world. Zethkar nodded slowly. His forearms were crossed behind his back as he studied the tactical display. The Shadow Gate appeared as a shimmering energy barrier surrounding Earth's entire solar system. It had been there for over 300 years, installed by the Galactic Federation to contain what they considered a dangerous species. The humans were violent, unpredictable, and showed disturbing signs of rapid technological growth. Rather than risk them spreading across the galaxy, the Federation had decided to cage them. The official records called it protective quarantine for the benefit of galactic peace. But now the Federation was gone, destroyed by internal wars and corruption. The hegemony had risen to take its place, and Zethkar commanded one of their most powerful fleets. His mission was simple: harvest Earth's resources and eliminate its population. Humans were no longer protected by Federation law. Fleet. "Status report," Zethkar commanded. "All ships ready, sir. 200 heavy cruisers, 50 dreadnoughts, and 1,000 support vessels. Our scouts report the Shadow Gate shows no defensive capabilities beyond the basic containment field." Zethkar smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. The humans had been trapped for centuries while the galaxy advanced around them. They still used primitive chemical rockets and fought wars with metal projectiles. Some intelligence reports even suggested they were still burning fossil fuels for energy. "Any signs of space-based defenses?" he asked. "Negative, sir. Long-range scans show only primitive satellites and a few small space stations. No military vessels detected beyond their atmosphere." "Perfect." Zethkar turned to address his bridge. "Crew. Today we harvest a world that has been isolated from galactic progress for 3 centuries. Their weapons cannot harm our shields. Their ships cannot outrun our slowest cargo haulers. This will be over in hours." The fleet moved forward, in perfect formation. Zethkar had commanded similar operations dozens of times. Primitive worlds always followed the same pattern: initial panic, desperate attempts at resistance, then surrender when they realized how outmatched they were. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from Earth," the communications officer announced. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, showing a human female in what appeared to be a military uniform. She had short gray hair and calm brown eyes that seemed far too steady for someone facing annihilation. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of Earth Defense Command," the human said. Her voice was clear and professional. "We are aware of your approach and your intentions. I am authorized to offer you one opportunity to withdraw from this system peacefully." Several bridge officers laughed. The human continued speaking as if she had not heard them. "If you choose to proceed, you will be considered hostile forces and dealt with accordingly. You have 30 minutes to begin your withdrawal. This is your only warning." The transmission ended. Zethkar stared at the blank screen for a moment, then began laughing. The sound echoed through the bridge as his officers joined in. "Did she just threaten us?" his lieutenant asked between chuckles. "I believe she did," Zethkar replied, wiping tears from his eyes. 30 minutes to withdraw. Dealt with accordingly. These humans have been isolated so long they have no concept of their place in the galaxy. He composed himself and addressed his fleet. "All ships prepare for immediate assault. Let us show these primitives what real power looks like." The hegemony fleet accelerated toward the Shadow Gate. Zethkar expected the energy barrier to resist their passage, but to his surprise, it flickered and died as they approached. The ancient containment field simply vanished. "Convenient," he muttered. The Federation technology must have finally failed after all these centuries. But his tactical officer was frowning at his displays. "Sir, I am detecting some unusual energy signatures from the inner system." "Define unusual." "The readings are inconsistent with our intelligence reports. There appear to be artificial structures throughout the asteroid belt and on several moons, much larger than our scouts indicated. Zethikar waved dismissively. Probably mining operations. These humans have had centuries to dig holes in rocks. It changes nothing. The fleet crossed into Earth's solar system, and suddenly every sensor on every ship began screaming warnings. "Sir!" The tactical officer's voice cracked with surprise. "Multiple contacts appearing throughout the system. I count over 500 ships, sir. Large ships. Impossible." Zethikar moved to look at the displays himself. Our intelligence clearly stated. The words died in his throat. The tactical plot showed red icons appearing everywhere, behind asteroids, emerging from the dark side of moons, rising from what had appeared to be empty space. Ships that had somehow remained completely hidden until this moment, and they were not primitive vessels. The human ships were sleek and angular, built with materials that seemed to bend light around them. They moved with impossible grace, accelerating in ways that violated everything Zethikar knew about physics. Energy readings from their power cores registered off his instrument's scales. "How many?" he whispered. "Still counting, sir. Over 800 now. Sir, these are not primitive vessels. These are more advanced than our ships." The communication system activated without anyone touching the controls. Admiral Chen's face appeared again, but this time she was not alone. Behind her, Zethikar could see what was obviously a warship's bridge, filled with humans working at stations that displayed technology he did not recognize. "Commander Zethikar of the Hegemony 5th Fleet," she said, and Zethikar felt his blood freeze. She knew his name. She knew his fleet designation. "You chose to ignore our warning. That was unfortunate but not unexpected." "How do you?" he began, but she continued speaking. "For the past 60 years, your people and others have treated Earth as a primitive world safely contained behind an energy barrier. You were wrong on both counts. We have been watching you, studying you, learning from you. The Shadow Gate was not a prison keeping us in. It was a blind keeping you from seeing what we were becoming." Around the fleet, human ships began moving into attack formations. They moved like predators, surrounding the hegemony forces with fluid precision. "Your ships are impressive," Admiral Chen continued, "but they were designed to fight other Galactic Federation technology. We designed ours specifically to fight you." "This is impossible," Zethikar said. "You are primitives. You barely have spaceflight." Admiral Chen smiled, and for the first time Zethikar understood why the Federation had been afraid of humans. There was something cold and calculating in that expression, something that spoke of intelligence and violence perfectly combined. "Commander, we put men on our moon using chemical rockets in 1969. We built a space station with nuclear power in 1973. We developed fusion reactors in 1987. We solved faster-than-light travel in 1995. We cracked the secrets of your impenetrable energy barriers in 2003. We have been preparing for this conversation for 62 years. The tactical display showed more human ships appearing. Over 1,000 now, each one radiating power signatures that made hegemony dreadnoughts look like shuttlecraft. "You see, Commander, humans have a particular talent. When someone tells us we cannot do something, we find a way to do it anyway. When someone tries to cage us, we spend every waking moment figuring out how to break free. And when someone threatens our home," her smile vanished, "we become very creative about solving the problem permanently." Zethikar tried to maintain his composure, but his hands were shaking. "You cannot possibly match our firepower. We have 200 heavy cruisers. We counted them, along with your 50 dreadnoughts and 1,000 support ships. Our computers have been tracking your fleet since you entered this galaxy 3 weeks ago." 3 weeks ago? That was impossible. His fleet had been using full stealth protocols. "Commander, you have a choice to make," Admiral Chen said. "You can order your fleet to surrender, in which case we will escort you safely out of our system and you can return home with this story as a warning to others. Or you can attempt to carry out your mission to harvest our world and eliminate our population." She paused, studying him through the screen. I should mention that no hegemony fleet has ever encountered human military technology in actual combat. You would be the first. Your tactical data would be very valuable to us as we plan our expansion into the galaxy. Expansion? Sethkar's voice came out as a croak. Did you think we would remain in this system forever, Commander? We have been prisoners for 62 years. Now we are free. And we have many questions for the civilizations that kept us caged. We intend to ask those questions in person. The human ships were moving closer now. Sethkar could see weapon ports opening along their hulls, revealing technology that made his advanced sensors simply display error messages. You have 30 seconds to decide, Commander. Surrender and withdrawal or combat. Choose carefully. This decision will determine whether your species remembers you as the leader who brought them a valuable warning, or as the fool who started a war they could never win. Sethkar looked around his bridge. His officers were staring at the tactical displays with expressions of growing terror. Outside the viewports, human ships moved like sharks through water, beautiful and deadly in ways that made his stomach turn. He had come here expecting to harvest a primitive world. Instead, he had awakened something that had been waiting in the darkness for over 60 years, something that had used every moment of its imprisonment to grow stronger, smarter, and more dangerous. The humans had not been caged to protect the galaxy from them. They had been caged to protect the galaxy from what they would become when they got free. And now they were free. 20 seconds, Commander, Admiral Chen said softly. Sethkar closed his eyes and tried to imagine explaining this to his superiors. How could he tell them that the primitive humans they had planned to exterminate possessed a fleet that could destroy his forces without breaking formation? 10 seconds. He opened his eyes and looked at Admiral Chen's face on the screen. She was waiting patiently, but he could see the predator behind her calm expression. This was a creature that had evolved on a world of constant conflict, refined by millions of years of warfare, and given 60 years to prepare for this exact moment. 5 seconds. Sethkar took a deep breath and made the only choice that would let him see another sunrise. All ships, he announced to his fleet. Begin. Immediate withdrawal from this system. Set course for home. Maximum speed. Admiral Chen nodded once. A wise decision, Commander. Safe travels. As his fleet began its retreat, Sethkar wondered what he would tell the Hegemony Council. How could he explain that Earth was no longer a primitive world ripe for conquest, but the home of apex predators who had been secretly building the most advanced war fleet in galactic history? Behind them, the human ships watched them go. But Sethkar knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning. The humans were no longer content to remain in their system, and they had questions for the galaxy that had kept them prisoner. The Shadow Gate was down, and humanity was coming. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the center of the Shadow Gate research facility, watching the holographic displays that showed the Hegemony fleet retreating at maximum speed. Around her, technicians and scientists celebrated the success of humanity's first real contact with an alien military force. But Elena was not celebrating. She was remembering. 62 years ago, she had been a young astrophysicist working at the European Space Observatory when the Shadow Gate first appeared. The entire human race had watched in amazement as an energy barrier materialized around their solar system, cutting them off from the stars they had just begun to reach toward. At first, governments had panicked. Military leaders had demanded immediate action to break through the barrier. Scientists had worked around the clock trying to understand the technology that could cage an entire star system. But Elena had been part of the team that made the crucial discovery. The Shadow Gate was not completely opaque. It was a one-way mirror. The barrier blocks all matter and most energy from passing in either direction, she had reported to the emergency session of world leaders. But certain quantum frequencies can pass through from inside to outside. We cannot send messages out, but we can observe what lies beyond. That discovery had changed everything. While the world's politicians had raged about humanity's imprisonment, Elena and thousands of other scientists had begun the most important research project in human history. They had turned Earth's entire scientific establishment into a massive intelligence-gathering operation. We spent the first 5 years just learning how to see through the gate properly, Elena told the group of young engineers who had gathered around her workstation. Most of them had been born after the Shadow Gate appeared. To them, the barrier had always been part of the sky. We had to develop completely new forms of quantum observation technology. She activated a holographic display that showed the early days of the project, images of primitive observation posts, hastily constructed on the dark side of the moon where they would be hidden from any external watchers. By year 7, we could observe alien ships passing near our system. We recorded their engine signatures, their communication frequencies, their technological specifications. We learned to understand their languages, their politics, their military tactics. The young engineers listened intently. They had grown up hearing stories about the Shadowgate project, but few knew the full details of how humanity had transformed from prisoners to predators. Year 12 was when we achieved our first major breakthrough, Elena continued. We successfully reverse-engineered the basic principles of faster-than-light travel by studying alien engine emissions. Of course, we could not test it. Any FTL signature would have been detected immediately. She paused, looking out through the facility's main viewport at the construction yards that stretched across the asteroid belt. Massive human warships hung in the void like sleeping giants, their dark hulls designed to be invisible to most sensors. That was when the real project began. The Shadow Fleet Initiative. Elena had been 31 years old when she was chosen to lead humanity's most ambitious undertaking. The goal was simple in concept but staggering in scope. Build a military force capable of matching or exceeding anything the galaxy could bring against Earth. We faced a unique challenge, she explained, to the engineers. We had to develop advanced military technology without being able to test it in combat. We had to design ships that could fight enemies we had never directly encountered, and we had to do it all while remaining completely hidden from the outside galaxy. The solution had required the cooperation of every nation on Earth. Resources, personnel, and entire industries had been secretly redirected to the Shadow Fleet project. Mines on the dark side of the moon provided raw materials. Manufacturing facilities built inside asteroid caverns produced components using technology that did not officially exist. We studied every alien vessel that passed near our system, Elena said. We analyzed their weapons, their defenses, their tactical doctrines. We learned to think like a dozen different species, then designed countermeasures for each one. One of the engineers raised her hand. Dr. Vasquez, how did you develop technology more advanced than theirs if you were only observing them? Elena smiled. It was a good question, one that had puzzled alien commanders for decades. We had several advantages they could not match, she explained. First, we had time, 62 years of uninterrupted research and development. Second, we had motivation. Every human understood that our species' survival depended on this project. Third, we had perspective. She activated another display showing comparative technological development curves. The galaxy had become stagnant. The same species had dominated for thousands of years using the same basic technologies. They had grown comfortable, predictable. But humans had something they lacked, the pressure of being caged. Elena remembered the breakthrough moments. The day her team had cracked the secrets of zero-point energy extraction. The morning when they successfully tested their first gravity manipulation system. The afternoon when they realized they could build weapons that bent the laws of physics themselves. We also had access to something no other species possessed, she continued. Complete intelligence on all our potential enemies. While they knew nothing about our capabilities, we knew everything about theirs. The Shadow Gate had been a gift, though the aliens who built it had not intended it that way. For 60 years, humanity had been the ultimate passive observer, watching and learning while remaining unseen. By year 20, we had prototype starships that could outperform anything in the galactic fleets. By year 30, we had developed weapon systems that made their dreadnoughts look like shuttlecraft. By year 40, we were building the infrastructure for mass production. Elena walked to a viewing window that looked out over Construction Bay. 7. A kilometer-long human warship hung in the void, its hull bristling with weapons that could crack planets. The most important breakthrough came in year 45, she said. We learned how to manipulate the Shadowgate itself. That discovery had been the key to everything. The energy barrier that had imprisoned humanity was incredibly sophisticated, but like all technology, it had weaknesses. Elena's team had spent 5 years mapping every quantum frequency, every energy pattern, every control protocol. We realized we could make the gate selective, she explained. Instead of blocking everything equally, we could choose what passed through and what did not. We could make ourselves invisible to outside observers while maintaining perfect visibility outward. The implications had been staggering. Humanity could not only observe the galaxy but could also send probes beyond the barrier without detection. Unmanned ships had been dispatched to key systems, gathering intelligence and establishing hidden supply caches. We seeded the major trade routes with sensor networks, Elena said. Every alien fleet movement was tracked and analyzed. We knew the locations of their shipyards, their military bases, their political centers. We created the most comprehensive intelligence database in galactic history. One of the engineers looked troubled. But why prepare for war? Could we not have tried peaceful contact first? Elena's expression hardened. She had heard this question many times over the decades, usually from younger people who had not lived through the early years of the Shadowgate. We tried, she said simply. For the first 10 years, we broadcast peaceful messages toward every inhabited system we could identify. We transmitted mathematical proofs, artistic works, scientific discoveries. We demonstrated our intelligence and our desire for communication. She paused, remembering the hope and excitement of those early efforts. The response was always the same. Silence. When we finally learned to decode alien communications, we discovered why. The galaxy considered us a contained threat. Official. Federation records classified humanity as dangerously aggressive and unsuitable for galactic integration. They were not interested in peaceful contact. They were waiting for us to die out naturally behind our barrier. The room fell silent. Elena could see the impact of her words on the young faces around her. That was when we understood the truth. The Shadowgate was not protection. It was a tomb. They expected us to exhaust our resources and collapse into primitive barbarism, removing the threat we represented. When that did not happen fast enough, they began discussing more direct solutions. Elena activated a final display showing intercepted alien communications from 15 years ago. The content was chilling. Detailed discussions of sterilizing Earth's biosphere while leaving the planet, suitable for colonization. We learned that Commander Zethkar's fleet was not the first they sent to harvest our world. It was simply the first one to arrive after we had finished our preparations. 3 previous expeditions were planned but canceled due to political upheavals in their empires. She turned to face the assembled engineers directly. We prepared for war because war was coming whether we wanted it or not. The only choice was whether to face it as victims or as predators. Elena moved to the Central Command Station, where Admiral Chen was coordinating the fleet's response to the hegemony withdrawal. "Status report, Admiral," Elena asked. "The hegemony forces have cleared the outer system boundary," Admiral Chen replied. "Our long-range sensors are tracking their retreat toward the Vega sector. Estimated arrival at their home base in 14 standard days. And our response preparation? All Shadow Fleet elements are moving to ready status. Operation Breakout. Can commence on your order." Elena nodded. Operation Breakout was the culmination of 60 years of planning. Now that humanity's existence was known to the galaxy, there was no point in remaining hidden. The time had come to ask their questions directly. "Dr. Vasquez," Admiral Chen said, "the fleet commanders are requesting permission to begin Phase 2 operations." Elena looked out at the massive warships hanging in space around Earth. Each one represented decades of research, years of construction, and the concentrated expertise of humanity's greatest minds. They were works of art and instruments of war, designed by a species that had spent 60 years learning to be more dangerous than anything the galaxy had ever produced. "Permission granted, Admiral," Launch the Shadow Fleet. It is time for humanity to introduce itself to the galaxy properly. As Elena watched, the first ships began to move. They accelerated smoothly away from Earth, their exotic drives bending space-time around them. Soon they would carry humanity's message to every corner of the galaxy. We are no longer prisoners. We are no longer hiding, and we have questions that require answers. The Shadowgate had fallen, but that was only the beginning. Humanity's real emergence was just starting. Captain Marcus Torres stood on the bridge of the TNS Retribution, watching as his ship emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. This was humanity's first offensive operation beyond their home system, and Marcus felt the weight of history on his shoulders. "Captain, we are detecting multiple alien vessels in orbit around the fourth planet," his tactical officer reported. "Configuration matches hegemony mining platforms and defensive stations." Marcus nodded. Intelligence reports indicated that Kepler 442d was a major resource extraction site for the hegemony. Billions of enslaved beings from a dozen species worked in the planet's mines, harvesting rare elements that powered the alien empire's war machine. "Any sign they have detected us?" "Negative, sir. Our stealth systems are performing as expected. They show no awareness of our presence." Marcus smiled grimly. Human ships were designed to be invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. The galaxy was about to learn what it felt like to be hunted by predators they could not see coming. "Signal the fleet. Begin deployment according to plan." Around the Retribution, space seemed to shimmer as more human warships dropped out of stealth mode. 50 vessels materialized from nothingness surrounding the hegemony installations with deadly precision. "Captain, we are receiving a transmission from the planet surface," the communications officer announced. "It is not from the hegemony forces. The signal is different. Put it through." The main screen activated, showing a humanoid figure with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. The being looked exhausted and desperate, but there was hope in its expression. "Unknown ships, this is Administrator Keth of the Andromedan refugees on Kepler 442d. We detected your arrival and we pray you are not more hegemony forces. We have been enslaved here for 37 years. If you are liberators, we will do anything to help you." Marcus exchanged glances with his bridge crew. This was not part of the original mission plan, but it changed everything. The intelligence reports had mentioned slave labor, but had not detailed the scope of suffering on this world. "Administrator Keth, this is Captain Torres of the Terran Navy. We are here to neutralize hegemony military assets in this system." "What is your status?" The alien's eyes widened. "Terran, you are from the legendary prison world? The humans?" "We are no longer imprisoned," Marcus replied. "How many of your people are on that planet?" 40 million Andromedans, plus perhaps 60 million beings from other enslaved species. We work the deep mines under constant guard. The hegemony forces number approximately 50,000, mostly automated systems with organic supervisors. Marcus turned to his tactical officer. "Update the mission parameters. This is now a liberation operation." "Sir, our orders were to destroy the mining facilities and withdraw," the tactical officer said quietly. "Our orders were to demonstrate human capabilities to the galaxy," Marcus corrected. "Liberating 100 million enslaved beings will send a much clearer message than simply blowing up empty installations." He addressed the alien on the screen again. "Administrator Keth, we are going to free your people, but we need your help to minimize casualties during the operation." "Anything, Captain Torres. What do you need?" "Locations of all guard posts, defensive systems, and civilian shelters. We also need to know if the hegemony has any policies regarding prisoners during an attack." The alien's expression darkened. "If they detect a serious threat, they will activate the termination protocols. All slaves will be killed rather than allowed to be liberated. It has happened before." Marcus felt his jaw clench. The galaxy had spent decades treating humans as dangerous primitives while ignoring truly monstrous behavior from their own civilized species. That was about to change. How long would it take to activate these protocols? Perhaps 10 minutes from the first. "Alert. The automated systems are very efficient. Then we have 10 minutes to end this, Marcus said. Stand by, Administrator, help is coming. He cut the transmission and turned to his crew. All hands, this is the captain. We have just learned that this system contains over 100 million enslaved beings. The enemy will attempt to murder all of them if they detect our attack. This is no longer just a military operation. This is a rescue mission. Marcus activated the fleet communication system. All ships, this is Retribution Actual. New mission parameters are in effect. We have 10 minutes to neutralize all enemy forces and secure the safety of civilian populations. Execute Plan Delta. Plan Delta was the most aggressive tactical option in the human playbook. It involves simultaneous strikes against every enemy asset in the system, designed to prevent coordinated resistance or communication between enemy forces. Captain, all ships report ready, his tactical officer announced. Begin the attack. Space around Kepler 442 suddenly erupted with violence. Human warships dropped their stealth fields and opened fire with weapons that bent reality itself. The hegemony orbital platforms designed to resist conventional attacks simply ceased to exist as human particle beams tore them apart at the molecular level. On the planet's surface, hegemony guard posts found themselves under assault by weapons they could not understand. Human boarding parties materialized inside sealed bunkers, having passed through solid walls using phase shift technology. Automated defense systems tried to respond but found their targeting computers useless against enemies who could manipulate local gravity fields. Status report, Marcus commanded. Orbital platforms destroyed. Surface installations are being systematically neutralized by our marine forces. Enemy communications have been completely jammed. Estimated time to complete. Neutralization, 7 minutes, 30 seconds. On the main screen, Marcus could see the planet below. Massive mining complexes stretched across its surface like scars, testament to decades of exploitation. But scattered among the industrial facilities were the crude shelters where millions of enslaved beings lived in misery. Captain, we are receiving multiple transmissions from the planet's surface, the communications officer reported. Various alien species are asking if the liberation is real. Tell them it is very real, Marcus replied. And tell them help is on the way. As human forces swept through the hegemony installations, the true scope of the atrocity became clear. The mining operations had turned an entire world into a prison camp. Beings from dozens of species labored in conditions that would have killed humans in hours. Captain Torres, Administrator Keth's voice came through the communicator. Our sensors show all hegemony forces have been neutralized. Is it over? The fighting is over, Marcus confirmed. But your liberation is just beginning. We are preparing to provide medical aid, food supplies, and transportation for any who wish to leave this world. Transportation? You would take us from here? Administrator, no sentient being should be enslaved. If you wish to return to your homeworlds, we will provide escort. If you prefer to settle elsewhere, we will help you find suitable planets. The choice is yours. Marcus could hear the alien beginning to cry. Similar scenes were playing out across the planet as millions of enslaved beings learned that their nightmare was finally over. Sir, his tactical officer said quietly, we are detecting FTL signatures at the edge of the system, multiple contacts approaching. Hegemony reinforcements? Unknown configuration. Ships are larger than standard hegemony vessels. Estimate arrival in 20 minutes. Marcus considered his options. His fleet could easily handle hegemony reinforcements, but the safety of the liberated populations was his priority. Signal the fleet to prepare for possible combat, and get me a communication link to those incoming ships. Several minutes later, the main screen activated to show an alien bridge. The creatures were unlike anything in the human databases. Tall, elegant, beings with silver skin and multiple arms. Their expressions seemed to combine surprise with something that might have been respect. Human vessels. This is Fleet Commander Silas of the Galactic Resistance Coalition. We detected the destruction of hegemony forces in this system and came to investigate. Are you responsible for liberating Kepler 442d? Marcus blinked in surprise. Galactic Resistance Coalition? A union of species fighting against hegemony expansion, Commander Silas explained. We have been monitoring this system for months, planning a liberation operation, but our attack would have taken weeks and resulted in massive casualties. How did you neutralize all enemy forces in under 10 minutes? We are humans, Marcus replied simply. We specialize in solving impossible problems. The alien commander studied him through the screen. Humans. The mythical species imprisoned behind the Shadow Gate. We heard rumors that you had emerged, but we did not believe them. The hegemony described you as primitive savages. The hegemony was mistaken about many things, Marcus said, including their assumption that enslaving innocent beings would go unanswered. You speak of justice as if you have the power to enforce it across the galaxy. Marcus looked around his bridge, at the displays showing human ships protecting liberated worlds, at the tactical plots showing enemy forces fleeing in terror from encounters with human vessels. Commander Silas, 3 weeks ago we were prisoners, in our own solar system. Today we liberated 100 million enslaved beings in 10 minutes. Tomorrow we will free 100 million more. The galaxy taught us that might makes right. Now they are going to learn what happens when the mightiest species in the galaxy believes in justice. The alien commander was quiet for a long moment. The coalition has been fighting the hegemony for 200 years with limited success. If you truly possess such capabilities, we do, and we are prepared to share them with allies who share our values. What values are those, Captain? Torres? Marcus thought about Earth, about humanity's long history of struggle against oppression, about the principles that had driven their species to survive and thrive despite impossible odds. Freedom for all sentient beings, justice for the oppressed, and a very simple promise: no one gets left behind. Commander Silas nodded slowly. The coalition would be honored to discuss an alliance with your people. As the human fleet prepared to escort the liberated populations to safety, Marcus reflected on how much had changed in just a few weeks. Humanity had entered the galactic stage not as supplicants seeking acceptance, but as liberators offering protection to the weak and justice to the oppressed. The hegemony had made a crucial mistake. They had assumed that caging an aggressive species would make them less dangerous. Instead, they had given humanity 60 years to study, plan, and prepare. Now that preparation was paying dividends across the galaxy. Captain, his communications officer called. We are receiving reports from other human fleets. Similar operations have been successful in the Tau Ceti, Wolf 359, and Proxima Centauri systems. Total liberated populations now exceed 400 million beings. Marcus smiled. The Shadow Fleet was living up to its promise. Across the galaxy, enslaved beings were learning that freedom was no longer just a dream. It was a human guarantee. Set course for the rendezvous point, he ordered, and signal Earth. Tell them that first contact with the galaxy is proceeding exactly as planned. As the Retribution jumped to FTL, Marcus looked back at the planet they were leaving behind. For the first time in decades, Kepler 4i42d was free, and humanity was just getting started. High Admiral Korath Zal of the Hegemony Supreme Fleet stood before the Emergency War Council, his massive form trembling with barely controlled rage. The holographic displays around him showed the tactical situation across 17 star systems, and every single one told the same impossible story. In the past 30 standard days, he reported to the assembled military leaders, we have lost control of 43 star systems. Over 200 capital ships have been destroyed or captured. Approximately 800 million enslaved workers have been liberated by human forces. The council chamber fell silent. These were beings who had conquered galaxies, who had never known defeat. The concept that a single species could inflict such damage was beyond their understanding. How is this possible? Demanded General Vextar, commander of the Hegemony's eastern territories. Our intelligence reported that humans were primitive, creatures barely capable of interplanetary travel. Our intelligence was flawed, Korath Zal admitted bitterly. The humans have been observing us for decades while remaining hidden behind their barrier. They know our tactics, our weaknesses, our capabilities. Meanwhile, we know nothing about theirs. He activated a tactical display showing recent human ship movements. Red lines traced attack patterns that violated every principle of conventional warfare. They do not fight like any species we have encountered. Their ships appear from nowhere, strike with overwhelming force, then vanish before reinforcements can arrive. They coordinate attacks across multiple systems simultaneously, preventing us from organizing effective responses. What about their technology? Asked Admiral Jakmos. Are they truly more advanced than us? Koreth Zal's expression darkened. Analysis of wreckage from destroyed human vessels suggests their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Their weapon systems operate on principles we do not understand. Their defensive capabilities make our most powerful guns useless. He showed recordings from the Battle of Proxima Station. Hegemony dreadnoughts fired their main batteries directly at human ships, only to watch their beams bend around their targets as if the laws of physics had been locally suspended. But the most disturbing aspect is not their technology. Koreth Zal continued. It is their strategy. They are not simply destroying our forces. They are dismantling our entire civilization. The council members shifted uncomfortably. They had built their empire on the systematic exploitation of weaker species. The concept that someone might turn their own methods against them was terrifying. Every world they attack follows the same pattern, the High Admiral explained. First, they neutralize all military assets with surgical precision. Then they locate and liberate enslaved populations. Finally, they offer those populations transportation to new homeworlds and protection from retaliation. Protection from us, General Vextar said quietly. Yes, the humans are not content to free slaves. They are actively building an alliance of liberated species. Each world they save becomes a recruiting ground for their cause. Admiral Jakmos studied the tactical displays. How many species have joined them? Current estimates suggest 47 different species have formally allied with the humans. Hundreds of millions of beings who were previously under our control now serve in human-led fleets or provide logistical support to their operations. The implications were staggering. The hegemony's military advantage had always been based on superior numbers and resources. If their former slaves were now fighting against them, that advantage was rapidly disappearing. What about their home system? Asked General Vextar. Earth must be vulnerable while their fleets are spread across the galaxy. Koreth Zal shook his head. 3 separate reconnaissance fleets have attempted to approach the Sol system. None returned. Long-range scans show massive orbital fortifications and ship concentrations that dwarf anything we have observed elsewhere. He paused, studying the faces of his fellow commanders. The humans appear to have spent decades preparing for exactly this scenario. Every move they make suggests long-term, strategic planning at a level we have never encountered. Then we need to adapt, Admiral Jakmos declared. If they can plan, so can we. If they can coordinate multiple attacks, so can we. We must organize a unified response that— He was interrupted by an aide rushing into the chamber. The young officer's expression was one of absolute terror. High Admiral, urgent report from the outer perimeter. Multiple human fleets have been detected approaching the core systems. They will reach Hegemony Prime within 48 hours. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Hegemony Prime was the capital world of their empire, home to over 12 billion beings and the center of their military command structure. It had never been threatened by enemy forces. How many ships? Koreth Zal demanded. Initial counts suggest over 3,000 vessels, sir. But the numbers keep changing as more ships decloak. Our sensors cannot get accurate readings on their total strength. General Vextar stood up, his 6 arms gesturing wildly. This is impossible. How did they mass such a force without our detection? The same way they did everything else, Koreth Zal replied grimly. By being better at warfare than we are. He activated the main tactical display, showing the approaching human fleets. They moved in perfect formation, their advance carefully coordinated to avoid the hegemony's remaining strongholds, while cutting off potential escape routes. Sir, the aide continued, there is more. We are receiving reports of simultaneous human attacks on military installations throughout the inner systems. It appears they are conducting a comprehensive offensive designed to cripple our command and control capabilities. Admiral Jakmos stared at the display in horror. They are not just attacking us, they are dismantling us, systematically destroying everything we have built over thousands of years. The question, said General Vexitar quietly, is what do we do about it? Korethzal had been asking himself the same question for weeks. Every tactical analysis came to the same conclusion. The hegemony could not win a conventional war against humanity. Their technology was inferior, their intelligence was compromised, and their former slaves had turned against them. We have 3 options, he announced to the council. First, we can attempt to negotiate a surrender that preserves some portion of our civilization. Second, we can activate the Scorched Galaxy Protocol and destroy everything rather than let the humans claim it. Third, we can retreat to the Outer Rim and attempt to rebuild our strength in unexplored sectors. The Scorched Galaxy Protocol was the hegemony's ultimate contingency plan. If faced with total defeat, they would activate weapons of mass destruction across their territory, turning habitable worlds into lifeless rocks rather than allow enemies to benefit from conquest. Activate the protocol, General Vexitar said immediately. If we cannot rule the galaxy, no one should. Wait, Admiral Jekmos interjected. That would mean the deaths of trillions of beings, including our own people. Better that than submission to primitives who crawled out of their cage only weeks ago. Korethzal studied the tactical displays, watching human forces advance with relentless precision toward the heart of the hegemony. He had spent his entire career preparing for warfare against conventional enemies. Nothing in his experience had prepared him for this. Sir, his aide reported, we are receiving a transmission from the approaching human fleet. They are requesting communication with the hegemony leadership. Put it through. The main screen activated, showing a human female in what appeared to be a military uniform. She had calm blue eyes and an expression of complete confidence. Behind her, the bridge of her ship bustled with activity as officers coordinated what was obviously a massive military operation. Hi, Admiral Korethzal, she said, and once again a human demonstrated impossible intelligence capabilities by knowing exactly who she was addressing. I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Alliance. Fleet, I believe we need to discuss terms. Terms, Korethzal managed to say. You are here to demand our surrender? I am here to offer you a choice, Admiral Chen replied. The hegemony as a military force is finished. Your fleets are scattered, your installations are compromised, and your former subjects have joined our cause. The question is how this ends. She paused, studying him through the screen with those unsettling human eyes. You can choose to activate your Scorched Galaxy Protocol and turn this region of space into a graveyard. You can attempt to flee to unexplored sectors where we will eventually hunt you down, or you can surrender and help us build something better than what you destroyed. General Vexitar stepped into view of the screen. Build something better? You primitive apes think you can replace a civilization that has existed for millennia? Admiral Chen's expression did not change. General Vexitar, your civilization was built on slavery, exploitation, and genocide. A child with building blocks could create something better. She turned her attention back to Korethzal. Hi, Admiral. I am prepared to guarantee the safety of all hegemony citizens who surrender peacefully. Your military leaders will face trial for war crimes, but your people will be allowed to integrate into the new galactic community we are building. And if we refuse? Then you will discover why every species in the galaxy was afraid of letting humans out of their cage. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Outside the windows, Hegemony Prime's orbital defenses were powering up for what might be their final battle. She is bluffing, General Vexitar declared. No species could possess the military power to destroy our entire civilization. But Korethzal was studying the tactical displays, watching human ships move with deadly precision toward objectives across 17 star systems. Every move demonstrated planning, coordination, and technological superiority that the hegemony could not match. For the first time in his career, he was facing an enemy that was simply better than his forces at every aspect of warfare, and that enemy was offering mercy. Hi, Admiral, his aide reported. Human forces have reached the outer defense perimeter. They are requesting surrender of all military installations. Crusade closed his eyes and made the hardest decision of his life. Signal all hegemony forces, he announced. Cease hostilities and prepare to surrender. The war is over. General Vextar stared at him in shock. You cannot be serious. We are the hegemony. We do not surrender to anyone. We do now, Crusade replied quietly, because the alternative is the extinction of our species. As hegemony, forces across the galaxy began laying down their weapons. A new era began. The age of human dominance had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the TNS Prometheus Unbound, humanity's new flagship, watching the greatest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Stretching across the void before her were over 10,000 vessels representing 49 different species, all united under the banner of the Terran Alliance. 6 months had passed since the hegemony's surrender, and the galaxy was transforming at a pace that amazed even the humans who had orchestrated it. Where once there had been slave worlds and mining colonies, now there were free societies rebuilding their cultures and choosing their own destinies. Admiral, her aide Commander Rodriguez approached with a datapad. The integration reports from the liberated systems. Sarah took the pad and scrolled through the statistics. 400 billion beings freed from slavery, 6,000 worlds returned to their original inhabitants, 200 species that had been considered extinct, now rebuilding their populations from hidden survivors. Any problems with the transition? She asked. Some conflicts between species that were historically enemies, but the mediation teams are handling them. The biggest challenge remains the former hegemony worlds. Many of their citizens are still struggling to understand that their empire actually fell. Sarah nodded. It was understandable. The hegemony had existed for over 3,000 years. Most of its citizens had never known any other way of life. Learning that their civilization had been built on systematic cruelty was a difficult adjustment. What about resistance movements? Scattered and ineffective. A few die-hard military units are still hiding in the outer rim, but they pose no significant threat. Most former hegemony forces have either joined our integration programs or simply retired to civilian life. Sarah continued reading the reports. The scope of transformation was staggering. Entire sectors that had been industrial wastelands were being converted into agricultural worlds to feed the billions of liberated beings. Ancient homeworlds were being restored using human terraforming technology. Species that had been scattered across the galaxy as slaves were being reunited with their families. Admiral Chen, her communications officer, called from the bridge. Incoming priority transmission from Earth. It's Dr. Vasquez. Sarah made her way to the command center where the main screen showed Elena Vasquez in her office at Shadowgate Command. Despite being over 90 years old, Elena remained sharp and energetic, driven by the satisfaction of seeing her life's work come to fruition. Sarah, how are the integration efforts proceeding? Elena asked without preamble. Better than projected. We're ahead of schedule on infrastructure reconstruction and population resettlement. The Alliance members are exceeding expectations in their cooperation efforts. Good. I'm calling because we've received contact from an unexpected source. Long-range sensors have detected approaching vessels from outside our local galaxy group. Their technology signatures don't match anything in our databases. Sarah felt a familiar tension in her stomach, just as humanity was establishing its new order. Another potential threat was approaching. Details? The ships are still 6 months out, but their energy readings suggest technology significantly more advanced than even ours. They're definitely artificial vessels, but we can't determine the species or their intentions. Invasion fleet? Unknown. They're broadcasting what appears to be a peaceful contact signal, but it's in mathematical codes we haven't deciphered yet. I'm assembling the linguistics teams now. Sarah considered the implications. Humanity had spent the past 6 months proving to the local galaxy that they were the new dominant power. But if there were older, more advanced civilizations beyond their current borders, the situation could change dramatically. What's our military readiness? All Shadow Fleet elements remain at full capability. The integrated Alliance fleets are still training with our equipment, but they're learning fast. If we need to defend the galaxy again, we have the resources. Let me know the moment you have more information, Sarah said. I'll begin positioning our forces for potential first contact scenarios. After the transmission ended, Sarah walked to the Strategic Planning Center, where holographic displays showed the current state of the galaxy. Green indicators marked liberated worlds. Blue showed alliance members and yellow represented neutral systems still deciding their allegiance. It was a beautiful sight, but Sarah knew how fragile it all was. The Terran alliance was only 6 months old. If another aggressive civilization appeared, would their new allies stand with humanity, or would old fears and prejudices resurface? Admiral, Commander Rodriguez approached again. The weekly reports from our exploration fleets. Sarah took the new datapad. Human ships were now pushing into previously unexplored regions of the galaxy, mapping new systems and searching for other civilizations that might need assistance or pose potential threats. Any discoveries? 3 new species encountered, all peaceful. The Crystalline Collective has requested alliance membership after we helped them repel raiders from the Void Nomads. The floating cities of Aegis want to establish trade relations, and we found evidence of an extinct civilization that appears to have been destroyed by some kind of artificial intelligence plague. AI plague? Their ruins show signs of a technological civilization that developed artificial intelligence, then was completely wiped out when their creations turned against them. The timeline suggests it happened about 2,000 years ago. Sarah frowned. Humanity had always been careful with artificial intelligence development, but not all species shared that caution. If aggressive AIs were loose in the galaxy, it could explain some of the mysterious disappearances of entire civilizations over the centuries. Flag that for investigation by our xenoarchaeology teams. We need to understand what happened and whether the threat still exists. As she continued reviewing reports, Sarah reflected on how much humanity had changed in such a short time. 6 months ago, they had been prisoners in their own solar system. Now they were responsible for the safety and welfare of hundreds of billions of beings across thousands of worlds. It was a responsibility they had not sought, but one they had accepted completely. Human nature might be aggressive and territorial, but it was also protective and just. Given the choice between conquest and guardianship, humanity had chosen to become protectors. Admiral, her communications officer called. Incoming transmission from the Andromedan delegation. Administrator Keth requests a moment of your time. Sarah smiled. Keth had become one of humanity's most valuable allies, helping coordinate the integration of liberated populations and serving as a bridge between human officials and the hundreds of species joining the alliance. The screen showed the familiar, blue-skinned figure, but now he wore the insignia of an alliance coordinator, rather than the ragged clothes of a slave. Admiral Chen, I hope you have a moment for good news, Keth said cheerfully. I always have time for good news, Administrator. The Andromedan Reconstruction Council has completed their evaluation of potential homeworld sites. We have chosen the Kepler 442 system where you first liberated us. With your terraforming assistance, we believe we can restore the 4th planet to habitability within 5 years. That's excellent news. The Engineering Corps will be pleased to help. There is something else, Admiral. The Council has asked me to convey a formal resolution passed by unanimous vote. We are officially renaming Kepler 442d. It will now be called Chen's World, in honor of the human who gave us back our freedom. Sarah was speechless for a moment. Having a planet named after her had never been among her ambitions, but she understood the significance of the gesture. Administrator, I am deeply honored, but you should know that I was only one member of a much larger team. Every human who participated in your liberation deserves equal recognition. The Council understands this, Admiral, but symbols are important. When our children learn the history of how we reclaimed our freedom, they will remember that it began with humans who chose justice over conquest. After ending the communication, Sarah returned to the observation deck. The massive Alliance fleet was conducting training exercises, with human vessels working alongside ships from dozens of other species. The coordination was impressive, but she knew it would be tested soon enough. Admiral, Commander Rodriguez joined her at the viewing window. Dr. Vasquez has sent an update on the approaching alien vessels. The linguistics team has made a breakthrough with their signal. What did they discover? The transmission appears to be from a species calling themselves the Architects. Based on the mathematical structures in their message, they claim to be the original builders of several galactic-scale engineering projects, including some we previously attributed to extinct civilizations. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Galactic-scale engineering. What kind of projects? The message references something called the network. Based on their descriptions, it appears to be a faster-than-light communication and transportation system spanning multiple galaxy groups. If it exists, it would explain how information and travelers moved between distant regions of the universe in ancient times. The implications were staggering. If this network was real and still functional, it would revolutionize humanity's understanding of galactic civilization. But it also raised questions about why such advanced beings were only now making contact. What do they want? According to the translation, they want to meet with whoever is responsible for the recent reorganization of this galaxy. They seem impressed by how quickly we dismantled the hegemony and established a new order. Impressed or concerned? Unknown. But, Admiral, there's something else. The linguistic analysis suggests these beings have been observing galactic civilizations for a very long time. They may have knowledge about other threats we haven't encountered yet. Sarah nodded slowly. The galaxy was vast, and humanity had barely begun to explore its mysteries. The hegemony had been a local power, but there might be far more dangerous civilizations lurking in unexplored regions. Signal the fleet commanders, she ordered. I want all Alliance forces prepared for potential first contact within 6 months, and send a message to Earth. Tell Dr. Vasquez to accelerate production of our newest ship designs. If we're about to meet the galaxy's architects, I want to make sure we're ready for whatever they might bring. As the Prometheus Unbound's crew began preparations for humanity's next challenge, Sarah looked out at the stars. 6 months ago, humans had been prisoners. Today, they were the galaxy's protectors. Tomorrow, they might need to prove themselves worthy of that role to beings who had been shaping the universe since before Earth's sun was born. But Sarah felt no fear, only anticipation. Humanity had spent 60 years preparing for their emergence into galactic civilization. Now they would discover what lay beyond even their most ambitious dreams. The Shadow Gate was not just down. It had never existed. Humanity had always been destined to walk among the stars. They were finally coming home to a universe that needed them more than it had ever realized. In the distance, new ships continued to arrive as more species requested Alliance membership. The Terran Alliance grew stronger each day, united not by conquest but by shared values of freedom, justice, and protection of the innocent. Whatever challenges lay ahead, humanity would not face them alone. They had become more than conquerors or liberators. They had become the guardians of galactic civilization itself, and the galaxy was safer because of it.
Admiral James Walker stood on the bridge of the EDF Valiant, his hands clasped behind his back as he stared at the endless sea of stars. The ship hummed beneath his feet, a comforting sound he had known for 20 years. Earth's flagship was old by galactic standards, a relic, as their alien allies often said. But Walker knew better. "Status report," he said, his voice calm but firm. Lieutenant Anna Miller looked up from her console. "All systems normal. Admiral, the fleet is in formation and ready for jump. Alliance coordinates received." Walker nodded. Earth had joined the Galactic Alliance just 20 years ago, a blink of an eye compared to species who had traveled the stars for thousands of years. Humans were the newcomers, the primitives. It didn't help that Earth had insisted on keeping their own ship designs, rather than adopting Alliance standards. "Put me through to the fleet," Walker said. Miller tapped a few buttons, and a small light turned green. "Channel opened. Sir, this is Admiral Walker. In 10 minutes, we jump to the Vega system to assist the Alliance with what they're calling a minor border dispute with the Krull Dominion. Remember your training. Remember Earth. And remember, we show only what we need to show." Walker out. The last part was important. Earth Command had been clear. This mission was as much a test of Earth as it was about helping the Alliance. Show competence, But not everything. Not unless necessary. The Valiant's jump drive engaged with a deep hum that vibrated through the hull. The stars blurred, stretched, and then snapped back into place. The Vega system spread out before them, a bright yellow star surrounded by 8 planets and 2 asteroid belts. And ships, hundreds of them. The Alliance fleet was already assembled, sleek, glowing vessels that seemed to float effortlessly in space. No visible engines, no visible weapons, just smooth curves and pulsing lights. Next to them, Earth's 12 warships looked like ancient sailing vessels beside modern yachts. Alliance command ship is hailing us, Miller said. On screen. The view screen flickered, and a blue-skinned alien appeared. Commander Xalis of the Trescent Fleet was tall and thin, with 4 arms and large pupilless eyes that seemed to look through Walker rather than at him. Admiral Walker, Xalis said, his translator giving his voice an artificial smoothness. Your fleet is late. The strategy meeting begins in 10 minutes. Try to keep up. The screen went dark before Walker could respond. Captain Tom Reed's face replaced Xalis on the screen. Reed commanded the EDF Intrepid, second only to the Valiant in size and firepower. Friendly bunch, aren't they? Reed said with a half-smile. As expected, Walker replied. Maintain formation and follow us in. And remember, show only what we need to show. Reed finished. Got it, sir. The Earth fleet moved toward a massive space station at the edge of the system's inner planets. Its design was typical Alliance architecture, all curves and light, with no sharp edges or visible seams. The docking procedure was automated, with tractor beams gently guiding Earth's ships into their assigned bays. Walker, Reed, and Commander Maria Jackson from the EDF Defender made their way to the strategy room. The station's corridors were filled with representatives from a dozen different species, most of whom gave the humans curious or dismissive glances. The strategy room was a large circular chamber with a holographic display in the center. Alliance commanders already stood around it, talking among themselves. The hologram showed the Vega system and the expected approach vector of the Krull forces. Commander Xalis nodded curtly as the humans entered. Beside him stood Commander Zorl of the Vala fleet, a reptilian species known for their tactical brilliance. Now that everyone is here, Xalis began, emphasizing everyone while looking at Walker, we can discuss our strategy. The Krull have been making small incursions along this border for months. Intelligence suggests they will send a small fleet, perhaps 20 ships, to test our resolve. Zorl's forked tongue flicked out briefly. We will position our main fleet here. He pointed to a spot near the system's 4th planet, and crush them with superior firepower. Walker studied the hologram. Something felt wrong. What about the asteroid belt? He asked. It would make a perfect hiding spot for additional forces. The room went quiet, and then several alien commanders laughed. It was an unsettling sound, coming from so many different species. This is why we put newcomers in the rear, Xalis said with obvious amusement. The Krull do not hide. Admiral, they are direct in their attacks, relying on their adaptive shielding. They have no need for your primitive tactics. Walker kept his face neutral. Of course, just asking. Your Earth fleet will position here. Zorl pointed to a spot far from the expected battle zone. Your vessels would not survive direct contact with Krull weapons. Your role is to observe and learn how real space combat works. Reed shifted beside Walker, clearly annoyed, but a slight shake of Walker's head kept him quiet. We have one question, Walker said carefully. What makes you certain this will be a small incursion? Xalis made a dismissive gesture with his lower right arm. The Krull are predictable. They test, they analyze, they withdraw. Only then do they commit significant forces. Commander Jackson spoke up. And if they don't follow the pattern this time? Another round of laughter, louder now. Then we still crush them, Zorl said. Our energy shields and particle weapons are generations beyond their technology, and millennia beyond yours. He looked pointedly at the projectile weapon holstered at Jackson's side. You still used physical ammunition. It's charming. Walker felt a familiar calm settle over him, the same calm that had served him through dozens of battles in Earth's orbital conflicts before first contact. We appreciate the instruction, he said with a slight bow. Earth's fleet will follow your lead. As they left the strategy room, Reed moved close to Walker. They have no idea what we can do, he whispered. Let's hope it stays that way, Walker replied. The Earth fleet moved to its assigned position, appearing to comply fully with Alliance commands. From the Valiant's bridge, Walker watched as the glittering Alliance ships formed up in their battle formation. Beautiful, but predictable. Lieutenant Miller monitored the long-range scanners. Sir, she said suddenly, I'm picking up multiple jump signatures at the edge of the system. Walker moved to her station. How many? Miller's face paled slightly. Not 20 ships, sir. I count at least 60. No, 70. Still increasing. Alert the Alliance command, and bring our fleet to full battle readiness. Quietly. On the main view screen, space seemed to ripple and tear as ship after ship appeared. Dark, angular vessels that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. The crawl had arrived, and they had not followed the pattern. Sir, Miller looked up at Walker. The Alliance is hailing all ships. Commander Xalis sounds concerned. Walker allowed himself a small smile. I bet he does. Put him through. This is not a raid. Xalis's voice had lost its mocking tone. We are tracking over 100 crawl warships. All vessels prepare for major engagement. Acknowledged, Walker said. Then, after the channel closed. And now we'll see who's charming. The crawl fleet moved forward, their formation perfect and threatening. This was no border skirmish. This was an invasion. And Earth's relic warships were about to show the galaxy what they could really do. Chaos erupted across Alliance channels as over 100 crawl warships advanced through the Vega system. The sleek Alliance vessels rushed to form a defensive line, their engines leaving trails of blue light against the darkness of space. All ships reporting ready, Admiral, Lieutenant Miller said from her station on the Valiant's bridge. Weapons hot but not targeted. Shields at maximum. Admiral Walker nodded, watching the main view screen with narrowed eyes. The crawl ships were exactly as Earth's intelligence had described. Angular black vessels with sharp edges and pulsing red lines along their hulls. They looked like predators, designed to inspire fear. Hold position, Walker ordered. Let's see how our advanced friends handle this. The Alliance fleet moved with impressive coordination, their formation spreading out to create a wall of energy shields. Commander Xalis's voice came through on the command channel, no longer mocking but clipped and professional. All vessels, engage on my mark. Target the lead crawl cruisers with concentrated particle beams. Walker exchanged glances with his bridge crew. Earth's tactical simulations had predicted this exact response, a show of overwhelming firepower meant to force a retreat. The Tresson and Volif ships fired in unison. Brilliant beams of energy lashed out across space, striking the front line of crawl vessels. For a moment, it looked devastating. Then the crawl ships shimmered, their hulls absorbing and dispersing the energy attacks. They're adapting, Miller said, eyes fixed on her scanner. The crawl shields are reconfiguring to match Alliance weapon frequencies. Walker nodded. As expected. What happened next stunned everyone. The crawl returned fire, but not with energy weapons. Small, missile-like objects launched from their ships, thousands of them, spreading out in swarms. What are those? Captain Reed asked over the command channel. The answer came seconds later. The swarms slammed into the Alliance shields, but instead of exploding, they attached themselves to the energy barriers. Each point of contact flared bright, and then dimmed, as the devices drained power from the shields. Shield leeches, Walker muttered. Clever. 3 Tresson ships suddenly lost their shields completely. The Crawl fired again, this time with conventional energy weapons. Without protection, the beautiful Alliance vessels were torn apart, their hulls never designed to withstand direct hits. Alliance fleet is taking heavy damage, Miller reported. Their formations are breaking. Walker watched as the carefully planned Alliance defense collapsed in minutes. The Crawl had studied their enemies well. Each Alliance tactic was met with a precise countermeasure. It wasn't just a battle. It was a slaughter. "Admiral, we're receiving a direct communication from Commander Salas," Miller said, surprise evident in her voice. The view screen showed Salas's command center, filled with smoke and flashing emergency lights. The commander's blue skin was now pale, almost white. "Earth Fleet," he said, his translator struggling to maintain a steady tone. "We request immediate assistance. Our shields are ineffective against their current weapons." Walker kept his face neutral, though a part of him wanted to remind Salas of his earlier mockery. "We're observing as instructed, Commander. What sort of assistance did you have in mind?" A nearby explosion rocked Salas's ship, and the image shuddered. "Anything. Do what you can. We're being decimated." Walker turned to Miller after the transmission ended. "Tactical analysis." Miller's fingers flew over her console. The Crawl are focused entirely on countering energy-based weapons and shields. Their vessels show minimal point defense systems for physical projectiles. They've never faced our type of weapons before. They've adapted to fight ghosts, Walker said quietly, then raised his voice. "Battle stations. All ships, prepare for offensive maneuvers." He opened the fleet-wide channel. "Earth Fleet, this is Admiral Walker. Form up on the Valiant. Weapons free, but hold fire until my command." The 12 Earth ships moved with practiced precision, forming a tight, arrow-shaped formation with the Valiant at the point. To anyone watching, it might have looked like the humans were making a desperate, suicidal charge. Commander Jackson's voice came through from the Defender. "Sir, the Alliance ships are still in our line of fire." "They won't be for long," Walker replied grimly. "The Crawl are pushing them back. We'll have clear shots in 30 seconds." The Earth ships accelerated together, their engines burning hot. Alliance vessels scrambled to get out of their way, probably assuming the humans were attempting to retreat from the battle. Walker waited, counting down in his head as they closed the distance to the Crawl front line. The enemy ships didn't adjust their formation. They barely seemed to notice the approaching Earth vessels. "Targeting solutions locked," Miller announced. "All ships report ready." Walker took a deep breath. "All ships, fire." What happened next would be discussed in Alliance war colleges for generations. The Earth ships fired in perfect unison. Not beams of energy, but solid projectiles. Tungsten rods accelerated to near-relativistic speeds by massive electromagnetic rails that ran the length of each vessel. The weapons were simple in concept, ancient by galactic standards, and utterly devastating. The first volley tore through a Crawl battlecruiser like it was made of paper. No energy shields, no matter how advanced, could stop physical objects moving at such speeds. The Crawl vessel broke apart, atmosphere and bodies venting into space. For 3 seconds, there was silence on all channels. Then the Earth fleet fired again. And again. 6 Crawl ships were destroyed in under a minute, their advanced defenses useless against weapons they had never encountered. The rest of their fleet began to turn, confusion evident in their suddenly erratic movements. "They're trying to adapt," Miller said, wonder in her voice. "But they can't. They have nothing in their systems to counter kinetic weapons of this scale." On the Alliance channels, stunned silence gave way to confused chatter. Commander Xalas's voice cut through it all. What are they firing?" Captain Reed's laugh could be heard across the command channel. "Just good old-fashioned metal, Commander. Moving really, really fast." The Crawl fleet attempted to regroup, bringing their weapons to bear on the Earth ships. Energy beams lashed out, striking the Valiant and the other Earth vessels. But where Alliance ships had shattered under such attacks, Earth's warships held firm. Armor holding at 87%. Miller reported as the ship shuddered. Minimal penetration on decks 4 through 6. Repair teams responding. Walker nodded. Return fire. Target their command vessels. Another volley launched from the Earth fleet, this time spread across multiple targets. The Crawl began evasive maneuvers, but they were too slow, too unprepared for this type of combat. "Sir, we're being hailed by multiple Alliance ships," Miller said, unable to keep the smile from her face. "They're asking if we require assistance." Walker allowed himself a small grin. "Tell them we're managing for now, but we'd welcome their support when they're ready." He looked back at the view screen, where the Crawl fleet was now clearly in disarray. Their formation had broken, their coordinated attack fallen apart in the face of Earth's primitive but devastating weapons. "Send to all Earth ships," Walker said. "Phase 2 begins now. Deploy drone swarms and prepare for close engagement." As the small, deadly drones launched from Earth's warships, Walker thought about all the mockery, all the dismissive comments about relics and outdated technology. Perhaps after today, the galaxy would learn an important lesson. Never underestimate humans and their capacity for warfare. The battle had only just begun. Space around the Valiant lit up with explosions as Earth's drone swarms engaged the Crawl fleet. Unlike the sleek, single-purpose weapons of the Alliance, Earth's combat drones were small, ugly, and brutally effective. Each one carried a modest payload, just enough to damage a specific system on an enemy ship. Drones performing at 92% efficiency. Lieutenant Miller reported. "Crawl point defenses are overwhelmed." Admiral Walker nodded, watching the tactical display. The Crawl ships were trying to target the drones, but there were simply too many. It was like trying to stop a flood with your hands. "Sir," Miller continued, "Alliance vessels are regrouping. Commander Xalis is requesting coordination information." Walker allowed himself a small smile. Just hours ago, the Alliance commanders wouldn't have dreamed of asking Earth for tactical advice. How quickly things change when survival was at stake. "Send them our drone control frequencies. Tell them to stay behind our ships and target any Crawl vessel that breaks formation." The battle had shifted from an orderly engagement to a chaotic melee. The Crawl, their initial advantage lost, were struggling to adapt to Earth's unconventional warfare tactics. Their ships were designed to fight energy weapons with energy shields, not solid projectiles and swarms of explosive drones. Captain Reed's voice came through on the command channel. "Admiral, my forward section is heavily damaged. We've lost 2 railguns, but the rest of the ship is operational." On any Alliance vessel, such damage would have meant retreat or destruction. But Earth ships were different. They were built to take hits and keep fighting. "Maintain position, Tom," Walker ordered. "Use what you have left." The EDF Intrepid continued firing, even with part of its bow torn open to space. Emergency bulkheads had sealed off the damaged sections, and the crew carried on as they had trained to do. This was what set human ships apart. They were designed with the expectation of damage. Commander Jackson's Defender moved to support the Intrepid, positioning itself to cover the damaged ship's blind spots. The 2 captains didn't need orders to coordinate. They followed battle tactics developed over centuries of Earth's naval warfare. On the main view screen, Walker could see that several Alliance ships had begun to mimic Earth's formation. The beautiful, fragile vessels were trying to position themselves behind the sturdier human ships, using them as shields while firing their energy weapons through gaps in the formation. "They're learning," Walker observed. Miller nodded. "Yes, sir." "And the Crawl are losing their cohesion." The tide of battle had turned dramatically. The Crawl fleet, which had begun with such overwhelming force, was now scattered and defensive. Several of their ships were attempting to withdraw, but Earth's drones pursued them relentlessly. A massive explosion drew everyone's attention. One of the largest Crawl vessels had suffered a catastrophic reactor breach. The shockwave damaged nearby ships, creating even more confusion in the enemy ranks. "Status report," Walker demanded. Miller scanned her console. Alliance fleet is down to 60% strength. Our fleet is at 85% combat effectiveness, though several ships have taken significant damage. Walker studied the tactical display. The Crawl still outnumbered them, but numbers meant little when your tactics failed. He opened a channel to the entire Earth fleet. All ships implement Formation Delta. Prepare for close quarters engagement. Earth's vessels began to move in what would have appeared to ancient eyes like a naval battle line. Ships positioned themselves side by side, creating overlapping fields of fire that no enemy could pass through without taking multiple hits. The Crawl flagship is moving, Miller announced. They're targeting the Intrepid specifically. Walker frowned. The enemy had identified Reed's damaged ship as a weak point. Warn Captain Reed. All nearby ships provide covering fire. But it was too late. 3 Crawl cruisers converged on the Intrepid, their weapons concentrating on the already damaged sections of the ship. The Earth vessel shuddered under the assault, more of its hull peeling away into space. Intrepid is reporting critical damage, Miller said, her voice tight. Their main reactor is destabilizing. Reed's face appeared on the command screen. Blood ran down from a cut on his forehead, and smoke filled his bridge. Can't hold her together much longer, James, he said, using Walker's first name for perhaps the first time in their long service together. Abandon ship, Tom, Walker ordered. Get your crew to the escape pods. Reed shook his head. No time. And they'd just pick off the pods anyway. His expression hardened. But I can make this count. Before Walker could respond, the Intrepid's engines flared to full power. The damaged ship turned and accelerated directly toward the largest Crawl cruiser. Tom, don't. Walker began, but the channel had already closed. The bridge crew of the Valiant watched in stunned silence as the Intrepid slammed into the Crawl vessel at full speed. The resulting explosion engulfed both ships, and when the light faded, nothing remained but debris. Captain Reed and the Intrepid are gone, Miller reported, her voice barely a whisper. So is the Crawl cruiser. Walker stood rigid, his face a mask of control despite the loss of his friend. Note in the log, Captain Thomas Reed gave his life to save this fleet. His sacrifice will not be forgotten. He allowed himself one deep breath, then continued. Now we finish this. All ships pressed the attack. No mercy. The Earth fleet surged forward with renewed determination. The Alliance vessels, witnessing Reed's sacrifice, followed close behind. For the first time, they fought as a single coordinated force. The Crawl flagship, a massive black vessel at the rear of their formation, began transmitting on all frequencies. The message displayed on the Valiant's screen in translated text. Earth vessels. Identify your technology. What weapons are you using? Walker's reply was brief. Nothing new. Just iron, grit, and a few thousand years of practice. He closed the channel and turned to Miller. Target their flagship. All weapons. The Valiant's railguns charge, humming with power. The sound reminded Walker of ancient warships, of cannon fire and battleship guns, the old ways of war that humanity had never fully abandoned. As the Earth fleet closed in on the Crawl flagship, Alliance vessels moved in perfect coordination with them for the first time. Commander Xalis' ship pulled alongside the Valiant, its energy weapons complementing Earth's kinetic arsenal. Perhaps Xalis' voice came through, more subdued than Walker had ever heard it. There is something to learn from your traditional methods, after all. Walker didn't respond. There would be time for talk later. Now was the time for action, for showing the galaxy that humanity's relics had teeth, and they knew how to use them. The combined fleet fired as one, and the Crawl flagship disappeared in a blinding flash of light and heat. The battle wasn't over, but its outcome was no longer in doubt. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not despite its warlike past, but because of it. The destruction of the Crawl flagship sent shockwaves through what remained of their fleet. For the first time since the battle began, the enemy ships broke formation completely, some turning to flee while others fought with desperate fury. Admiral Walker watched from the Valiant's bridge as the combined Earth Alliance fleet pressed their advantage. His uniform was stained with sweat, and his eyes burned from the smoke that lingered in the air despite the environmental systems working overtime. "Damage report," he ordered, his voice rough from shouting commands over the past 3 hours. Lieutenant Miller looked up from her console. Decks 3 through 7 reporting hull breaches, all contained by emergency bulkheads. Railguns 2 and 5 are offline. Drone reserves at 43%. Casualty reports coming in from all ships. Her voice faltered slightly. But our combat effectiveness is still at 70%. Walker nodded grimly. They had lost good people today. The Intrepid was gone with all hands, and every other Earth ship had taken damage. But they were still fighting, still effective, while the Krull fleet was falling apart. "Sir," Miller continued, "Commander Xalis is requesting a direct channel." "Put him through." The Trescent commander appeared on screen. His blue skin was now ashen gray with fatigue, and one of his 4 arms was bandaged. "Admiral Walker," Xalis said, his tone respectful for the first time. "My tactical officers have analyzed your combat data. We believe the remaining Krull forces are attempting to regroup near the outer planet. If they succeed, they could mount another attack." "Agreed," Walker replied. "What do you propose?" The question seemed to surprise Xalis. Just hours ago, he wouldn't have bothered asking the primitive human for tactical input. Now, he was seeking it. "My remaining ships have adapted our weapons based on your tactics. We can modify our energy beams to create kinetic impacts. Not as effective as your railguns, but it should help." "Good," Walker said. "Have your fastest ships harass their flanks. Keep them from regrouping. My fleet will drive straight up the middle." "That would expose your vessels to concentrated fire," Xalis objected. Walker's mouth curved in a grim smile. "That's what our armor is for, Commander." After the transmission ended, Commander Jackson from the Defender contacted the Valiant. "Admiral, the Defender's forward armor is at 30%. We'll take heavy damage if we push straight in." "Understood, Maria," Walker said. "But we need to keep their attention on us while the Alliance ships hit their flanks." "Can your ship take it?" Jackson didn't hesitate. "Yes, sir. We'll hold together." Walker turned to his bridge crew. "All hands, prepare for maximum acceleration. Weapons crews, load armor-piercing rounds. Medical teams on standby." The remaining Earth ships formed a tight wedge formation with the Valiant at the point. Their engines burned hot and bright as they accelerated toward the regrouping Krull vessels. Behind them, the more nimble Alliance ships spread out in a wide arc, preparing to strike from multiple angles. "They're targeting us," Miller warned as the distance closed. "All Krull weapons converging on our formation." Walker gripped the railing of his command station. "Steady. Hold course." The first hits came seconds later. Energy beams and plasma bolts slammed into the Earth ship's armor. Metal glowed and, in some places, vaporized under the assault. But the ships continued forward, unrelenting. "Armor failing on decks 9 through 12, a damage control officer reported. Emergency teams responding." Walker felt the ship shudder beneath his feet. "Distance to target." 30 seconds to optimal firing range, Miller answered, her fingers dancing over her console to reroute power to critical systems. The Valiant's hull groaned as another hit struck home. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. A nearby console exploded in a shower of sparks, throwing a young officer to the floor. A medic rushed to help him. 20 seconds, Miller counted down. Walker opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships, prepare to fire on my mark. Target their engine sections." The Earth vessels continued to absorb punishment as they closed the distance. On the tactical display, Walker could see the Alliance ships beginning their attack runs on the Krull flanks. Commander Xalis had kept his word. 10 seconds. The Defender took a direct hit to its bridge section. For a heart-stopping moment, Walker thought they'd lost another ship, but then Jackson's voice came through, strained but determined. "Defender is still operational. Bridge relocated to auxiliary control." 5 seconds. The crawl ships began to adjust their formation, finally realizing the danger of the head-on assault. But it was too late. "Mark!" Walker shouted. The Earth fleet fired in perfect unison. Railguns launched their deadly projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. At this range, there was no time for the crawl to evade. The tungsten rods tore through their hulls, shredding engine compartments and weapon systems. Simultaneously, the Alliance ships struck from both sides, their modified energy weapons causing actual physical impacts rather than the easily deflected beams they had used before. The crawl fleet, caught in this devastating crossfire, began to break apart. Some ships exploded outright, while others drifted powerless, their engines destroyed by the Earth fleet's precise targeting. Direct hits on 80% of targets, Miller reported, unable to keep the triumph from her voice. Alliance forces reporting similar success on their targets. Walker allowed himself to breathe again. Damage control. Status. Multiple hull breaches, sir. Life support failing on Deck 6. Railguns 1 and 4 still operational. The rest are offline. The battle wasn't over, but the momentum had clearly shifted. The remaining crawl ships, perhaps a third of their original number, were in full retreat, fleeing toward the jump point at the edge of the system. "Should we pursue, Admiral?" Miller asked. Walker studied the tactical display, considering their options. His ships were damaged, his crews exhausted. They had achieved their primary objective, defending the Vega system, but at a heavy cost. No, he decided. Let them go. They'll carry the message back to their leaders. "What message is that, sir?" Walker looked at the view screen, where the retreating crawl ships were visible as tiny points of light. That humanity isn't to be underestimated. That our relics have teeth. A new transmission came through. A direct message from Supreme Commander Gorv of the Crawl Forces. The alien's face filled the screen, his gray skin and 4 yellow eyes conveying an emotion Walker couldn't quite identify. "Earth Commander," Gorv said through the translator, "you have defeated us today with weapons our intelligence called obsolete. How is this possible?" Walker considered his answer carefully. "Your intelligence was incomplete, Commander Gorv. You prepared to fight energy with energy, shields with shields. You forgot the oldest lesson of warfare." "And what lesson is that?" Gorv demanded. "That innovation comes from necessity. Earth hasn't known peace for most of its history. We've been fighting ourselves for thousands of years. War is in our blood." Gorv was silent for a moment. "We will meet again, Earth Commander." "Count on it," Walker replied. "And next time, we won't be using just the old weapons." The transmission ended, and Walker turned back to his crew. Despite their exhaustion, their faces showed pride and determination. They had proven themselves against overwhelming odds. "All ships," Walker ordered, "stand down to recovery operations. Assist Alliance vessels as needed. And someone find Commander Zalus. I believe we have some tactical discussions to continue." As the Earth fleet began the long process of damage assessment and repair, Walker knew one thing for certain. The galaxy would never laugh at Earth's relic warships again. 3 days after the battle, Admiral James Walker stood in the Alliance Council chambers aboard the massive space station orbiting Vega Prime. The circular room was filled with representatives from 24 species, many of whom hadn't even known humans existed a week ago. Now, they all watched him with a mixture of curiosity, respect, and in some cases, unease. Walker's dress uniform was crisp and perfect, hiding the bandages beneath. Like many of his crew, he had refused to stay in medical bay once his wounds were stable. There was too much work to be done. The Alliance High Chancellor, a tall, willowy being named Trawl whose species communicated through color patterns rippling across their skin, stood at the center of the chamber. The patterns currently displayed showed formal respect, very different from the dismissive flickers Walker had seen during his first council meeting. "Admiral Walker," the Chancellor's translator conveyed. The Alliance Council has convened to formally recognize Earth's contribution to the defense of the Vega system. Without your fleet's intervention, this vital system would have fallen to the Krull Dominion. Walker nodded slightly, acknowledging the statement without speaking. Earth's diplomatic course had coached him on Alliance customs, when to speak and when to listen. Commander Xalis has requested to address the Council regarding the battle. The Chancellor continued, gesturing to where the Trescent commander stood. Xalis stepped forward, his movements stiff from his injuries. One of his 4 arms remained in a complex support device. He looked directly at Walker, and then turned to address the full Council. 3 days ago, I considered Earth vessels primitive relics. Xalis began, his translator not hiding the humility in his voice. I placed them at the rear of our formation, believing they would contribute nothing of value to our defense. He paused. I was wrong. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Alliance commanders rarely admitted error so openly. Earth's fleet not only engaged the Krull effectively, but their tactics and technology proved decisive in the battle. When our advanced energy weapons failed against adaptive shielding, Earth's primitive kinetic weapons cut through the enemy like they were made of mist. Xalis turned back to Walker. You fought like barbarians, he said, but there was no insult in his tone now, only respect. Perhaps there is something to be said for the old ways. Walker stepped forward. Now is the time to speak. The Earth Defense Fleet did what we were designed to do, he said simply. We protected our allies. We defended our shared territory, and we sent a message to those who would threaten us. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of various counselors. Humanity may be new to the stars, but we are not new to warfare. For thousands of years, we fought each other, developing and refining the art of battle. When we found peace on our world, we didn't forget those lessons. We preserved them, hoping we would never need them again. The chamber was silent now, every being focused on Walker's words. We didn't build our ships to impress anyone. We built them to survive, to fight, to win. Walker's voice grew stronger. And while we hope for peace with all species, including the Krull, we will always be prepared for war. The Chancellor's skin rippled with thoughtful colors. The Council has reviewed the battle data. Your casualties were substantial. The ship Intrepid was lost with all hands. Several other vessels severely damaged. Walker stood straighter, the pain of losing Reed and his crew still fresh. Captain Reed made the ultimate sacrifice to save others. Every member of Earth's fleet understood the risks when they enlisted. We honor their memory by continuing their mission. Lieutenant Miller stood at the back of the chamber, along with Commander Jackson and other survivors from the Earth fleet. Their faces showed their grief, but also their pride. The Alliance has much to learn from Earth, the Chancellor admitted, colors flowing in complex patterns. Our military doctrine has been complacent. We haven't faced a significant threat in generations. Commander Zoril, the Volith tactical officer who had once mocked Earth's weapons, stepped forward. I request permission to establish a joint training program with Earth forces. Our crews need to understand these alternative combat approaches. Walker nodded. Earth would welcome such cooperation. The Chancellor's translator conveyed their final statement. The defensive treaty with Earth will be upgraded immediately. Your world is no longer a provisional member, but a full Alliance partner, with all rights and responsibilities that entails. As the formal meeting concluded, Walker found himself surrounded by alien military officers, all asking questions about Earth's weapons, tactics, and training programs. The mockery was gone, replaced by genuine interest and respect. Commander Xalis approached him last. I must ask, Admiral, did you know? When you positioned your ships at the rear, were you already planning your attack strategy? Walker allowed himself a small smile. We always plan for multiple scenarios, Commander. It's another old habit. Xalis made a gesture that Walker had learned was a sign of deep respect among Tressans. If the Krull return in greater numbers, as I fear they will, the Alliance will need Earth's old habits more than ever. Later, alone in his temporary quarters on the station, Walker read through the casualty reports one more time. The names and faces of those lost weighed heavily on him. He opened a secure channel to Earth Command, where General Laura Hayes awaited his report. The mission was successful, Walker began. The Krull were repelled, but at significant cost. Hayes nodded, her expression solemn. Captain Reed's family has been notified. He will receive the highest honors. And the others? The same, every one of them. Hayes paused. The manufacturing facilities are already working at full capacity, James. New ships, incorporating both our designs and selected Alliance technology. Not to replace what worked, but to enhance it. Walker looked out the viewport at the stars beyond. They won't be laughing anymore. That was never the goal, Hayes reminded him gently. Respect will do just fine. And we've earned that, Walker agreed. For now. As he ended the transmission, Walker noticed a flood of new messages on his terminal. Requests from across the Alliance, worlds asking for Earth Defense Forces, technological exchange proposals, military training programs. The galaxy had taken notice of humanity. In the void beyond the station, repair ships swarmed around the damaged Earth vessels. The Valiant's scared hull bore testament to the battle it had survived, but it would fly again, stronger than before. Lieutenant Miller knocked on his door. Despite her exhaustion, she stood tall. "Sir, the crew is assembled in the station's memorial hall. They're waiting for you to speak about Captain Reed and the others." Walker nodded and rose to his feet, straightening his uniform. There would be time for diplomacy and planning later. Now was the time to honor those who had given everything to prove that humanity belonged among the stars. As he walked through the station corridors, Alliance personnel of various species stepped aside, offering gestures of respect. No one was laughing at Earth's relics anymore. Instead, they watched with newfound appreciation, and perhaps a touch of fear, as the representatives of the galaxy's newest, most battle-ready species passed by. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not despite its warlike past, but because of it. The old ways, it seemed, still had much to teach the galaxy.